Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started here in just a minute. For those of you joining us on YouTube Live, thank you very much. I appreciate your attention to our views and our videos. If you ever have any questions, give us a call at 800-492-8523. I would actually really enjoy it if you would just reach down there and hit that subscribe button. That'll give you an update every time we do go live, which is somewhat frequent. Also, if you, at the end of the session, if you like it, please just give us a thumbs up. It certainly helps us. I do check the comments. If you want to leave a comment, ask questions, feel free to do so. We start here promptly on the top of the hour. And this is a live recording, so we may have members join us from the class. And to if so, they'll be able to ask us questions at the end that's not recorded. So, hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Mark Knowles. I'm one of the founders of GovDirections. We have been in the market since 1998. In fact, on July 1st, we just celebrated our 28th anniversary. We're very thankful to have the opportunity to serve you in this arena. And if you leave from nothing else today, understand we're enthusiastic about what we do. We really like helping our members. We serve just over 140,000 registered users who in some capacity are tracking what's happening at the local, state, and federal government level. Of course, our value is truly in the state and local government sector, but we do have an aggregation service at govdirections.com that pulls together some 5,000 new calls for bids and proposals every day, some 1.5, 1.7 million listings per year. Our RFP delivery by GovDirections is the way we deliver, and we send that to you every morning about 4 a.m., 3 a.m., depending on where you're at. And it's a summary of each day's transactions that have occurred. And we now just recently, as in all of our services, have just issued, I think we just sent you our 1 billion alert that's gone to someone who has an interest in working with governments. And we are just once again thankful we've had the opportunity to serve you in that capacity. Now, today, one of the things we want to talk about is, so what happens when you get that email? What happens when you click on that link? What are you actually looking at and reviewing? So this segment of classes, there's going to be four total. And it's this week. I'm recording them every day live at 11 a.m. Eastern time, and then they're of course ready. Will be stored on our YouTube channel. So if you're there now, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be alerted. But you'll see the other series that we have. We're recording all during July. We're calling it our summer school of opportunity. And we have had already a good 100 people participate, companies, and that was during the July 4th time period. I think a lot of companies, this is the time of year we see a lot of vacation time. So it just happens to be the case. So I do appreciate your audience. This is today where we're going to talk about specifically is that statement of work. So when you receive that RFP, you link through, you go and you see the document. At that point, you're depending on the government to tell you exactly what there is that they're actually seeking from you as a contractor or potential contractor. This is, we built on that whole concept of the theory of a firm, and you have some sort of expertise or guidance that you can provide to local and state governments, and so they're looking to contract with you for that purpose. And so you need to understand in that their challenge is to be, what we refer to as the ABCs: accuracy, brevity, clarity, so that you know exactly what they're buying before you price or write a single word back to them, or frankly, before you even progress forward. I always kid around and I say, whenever you read the statement of work, and you catch the title, that catches your interest. But when you read the statement of work, that paragraph or two that really is concise and to the point, it should start singing that song in the back of your head. You're the one I wanted to find. That famous Coldplay song. That's one of my favorites, in fact. But if it's not playing that song, you need to move on. Okay, you'll find some other opportunities. It's a $7 trillion marketplace. In fact, this coming year, starting July 1st, the fiscal year starting for most state governments, state and local governments is the largest spending period in American history. They are got plenty of projects out there. They're contracting with the private sector. It's an active marketplace. And so I encourage you to take and browse it through our site. So let's get started here. Now, what is a statement of work? So a statement of work is really the core part of the document. Is a the whole the document itself, the RFP, is a technical document. It's defining exactly what the government is they're seeking to buy from you. Okay, and so the statement of work is usually a summary of that. Okay, so you'll have that scope, that basic scope, but it's going to have a more detailed parts to it that you're going to fall into as you go actually start reading through there. So there's certain parts of that that are probably a little bit more important than others. All of them important, don't get me wrong, but it's certain parts just really should be the foundation of the document. In fact, I have a small book in Amazon. It's called the RFP. I'd say that you can go search it, but it's also linked from our site. But it really kind of talks you through each section over time so that you can really learn what you're looking for. But it defines exactly what the government is buying. It is their responsibility to tell you that. And if there's some sort of question, then they should give you a period of time to ask questions back to them so the information is clear to you. Now, once you start responding back to them, that challenge is then reversed to you or transferred over to you. And so then you have to make sure that what you're telling them is accurate, brief, clear, to the point. Okay. Every deliverable, every timeline, everything they expect from you, that performance standard should live in that document because that's what they're going to measure you against. And that's going to be basically your, we've heard of things as, a handshake or a handoff, in technical terms, but this is basically the handshake. This is what we expect you to do. And you want to make sure that you understand that. Sometimes it's called a performance work statement or a statement of objectives, depending on, really, I think a lot of times we talked yesterday about the different types of contracting or contracts or documents they use, the request for proposal, the request for information. Go back and watch that video. But each type will have its own theme to it, I guess, is the way to think about that. But a performance work statement may be the request for a quote or invitation to bid, exactly what I need from you, when I need it, and how I need it. Statement objectives, more requests for information, requests for proposals. I kind of know what I want to accomplish, but yet you're the expert. Tell me what I need to do. Read the statement of work before you read anything else in the solicitation package. It's important that you do that. So that's when you first start that scope. Once again, it needs to start singing that song in your head. Your proposal must directly address every requirement in the statement of work. And so sometimes a lot of times in entrepreneurs, we get creative. I always tell my clients, do not get creative. It's kind of, contrary to the way we think as an entrepreneur, usually, or a small business owner, you're always looking for solutions. Here, your responsibility is to address every requirement they ask. Nothing else, nothing more. And because you can drift off and you can start talking about things they can't measure you against. It's in typical proposal. Down a request for information, a request for proposal, sometimes a little different than that. Just make sure because you sometimes can expand or tie back to those requirements. The statement of work versus a work statement or a statement of objective. What's the really difference in them? Well, a statement of work tells you exactly how to do the work step by step. Okay, this is what I expect from you. And you use those whenever the work is somewhat routine, well defined, repeatable maintenance support. For example, I need custodial services for the next 3 years. Here's what I need you to do: is 1,000 square feet, and I need you to have it up to the standard and the details. Okay. The work statement basically the government defines outcomes there, the performance, what you're looking for, what they're looking for you to accomplish. You then decide how you achieve them. Okay, so it becomes more on your responsibilities to respond back to them and make sure that you keep them satisfied. You use these whenever maybe like IT services. Most of my work is done that way. Professional services, I do consulting. I've mentioned it a couple times. I've worked on some 400 projects in 34 states. Okay, so it's been around. Excuse me, 36 states. I recalculated that. It's 36 states. And actually it pitched in all 50. I just haven't hit 14 of them. So there's a lot of work out there. But you have performance-based contracts and say, here's what I want you to accomplish within 4 months. And you go about, you tell me how you can do it. And then you're going to be responsible for speaking to them in how your methods to accomplish your objectives are. Okay. Or the work they require. Now, the statement of objectives oftentimes at high level, very high level. This is, I know that I need a cloud environment, but I'm not really sure what a cloud is. but you're the subject matter expert, so you tell me that. I want you to propose to me the entire solution and give me a roadmap to accomplish the objectives. And a lot of this is in R&D, innovation, complex problem solving is typically required for those. So first step, whenever you receive the RFP, read the scope of work. The opening paragraphs describe the big picture of what's needed. Okay, and that should speak to you right away. I usually now you can use AI tools to help you in that process of really get kind of summarizing that first opening. And then I don't really get into the details of a bid until I or an RFP until I kind of you gotta it's speaking to me. Okay, it's saying this is really up my alley. Even before I started looking at the minimum qualification, things of this nature. But then I'll move forward and I'll note the key service areas, the locations, a lot of mine is about location at this stage. I just passed my 62nd birthday. So I want to make sure I'm in a good spot, near a fishing stream, things like this, because I do a lot of work on location and I'm there a little bit of time. So I'm going to focus in on, the service areas requirements, the location, the geographic location, details like that for the overall mission. And I'm going to measure that against my indicators of success. Make sure you use that within our system. Those are a good way to really analyze the type of bids and RPs you need to be responding to. And I actually keep a tracking mechanism where I basically say, here, this one meets 100% of my indicators. This one here meets 50. So I'll know, unless I get up to 90 these days, I don't respond. Identify any government furnished equipment or information. What is the government going to actually do for you in this process? Okay. And they'll tell you that, because then don't expect them to do things unless they tell you they're going to do them. Right. Because if you don't, there has to be some sort of handshake there, the understanding of what's really to be expected. So if you need something, you got to ask for that, or you got to plan or be prepared to provide that. Okay. So, and then, do you have nowadays, is it going to be on site, remote, hybrid? I think a lot of things these days it's going to be drop ship somewhere. You can do it in any business anywhere in the United States, frankly, the whole world. A lot of the work's remote. I can do remote work, and now in Seattle, and I'm in Atlanta. It's not that difficult. And sometimes there's a hybrid. I might fly out to a meeting in Alaska, and then I would do everything else remote for the remaining part of the project, and then maybe show up the same. So understand what the location requirements are, and that's going to be they're going to speak to you in the actual document there in that scope. Now, as a part of all that, just as a pro tip, highlight any and every deliverable that you have to do with a marker. Sometimes I even on the side of my document paper, which I still print out these things, or if you have it on a Google Drive, you can put a little note to it and then say, this here is your responsibility on my staff, and then they will take care of that for you. So know who's in every deliverable, mark it down, who's going to do what, and start building that, as we talked about yesterday, the compliance matrix to get things done. And in fact, here it is again. A reminder, these are so important. Build a deliverable matrix so you can stick to the timeline. As we all know in business, work expands to fill the time available for its completion. And sometimes it gets compressed as well. And so you got to make sure you maximize your efficiency there. And the tools that we have are just so awesome. I'm lucky. Sometimes every day I wake up and say, I'm so grateful to be alive in this environment. So everything is all these technology changes and AI. A lot of people are concerned about. I'm not really at all. I'm embracing it, and we're using it to our maximum capacity. I've always tried to do that, have that outlook, that positive outlook in how you approach things. You just don't sit around and worry about tomorrow. Plan for it in deliverables and everything, but you focus in on success, and you'll have success. And then make sure you show evaluators how you understood every requirement, and let them know that you're thinking about this, that you made a deliberate effort. And that way, if you fail on something, they know at least you tried. So at least put it down there on that process. And then step 3, always identify the performance standards. How are you really being measured? I was talking to someone just yesterday. I was talking about how my training was always in productivity improvement and performance management, and that's what I went to school for, and that's sort of my life has been around government contracting, it seems, the last 28 years. But I really enjoy working within productivity. That's where I still consult in that topic. But performance standards are a big part of that, and understand, how do you get an A, man? And that's important. How do you in the RFP? How did you get an A? How do you get all 100 points? When I teach a grad school class, that's the first question I get every single session. It'll be, how do I get an A, Mr. Knowles? And sometimes they say Dr. Knowles, and I always correct them. I'm not doctor. All my knowledge is applied. But I would say this is how you get it. You pay attention, you'll get an A in my class. I'm a pretty good grader. I like to give you a benefit of doubt, but I just want you to pay attention and not necessarily. And so that's a big part of this. Pay attention to what they're asking for, and you will look for acceptable quality levels, the AQLs. Response times, requirements, uptime thresholds, things of this. So that you can understand how to make those things work to your advantage. These standards really do become your quality control, and understand how to do a quality control document as a part of the proposal, and what's going to happen when things go wrong, because they do, and how are you going to address those things, and how you make sure you achieve full performance whenever those things do happen. Understanding standards will also help you understand how to price. Government contracting is so different than private sector contracting. Sometimes when you make a little mistake, you have to reduce in private. In government, you got to accommodate for that, because it's going to happen. There's going to be things that you don't necessarily, there's so many moving parts and so many individuals involved with it. So you got to make sure you price it appropriately to accomplish your objectives for the organization. They will oftentimes, what they won't like is the inability to perform. Okay, just remember that whenever you are responding to a proposal. They don't want to pay too much. Nobody does. But I'm willing to pay more if I can alleviate any sort of risk of failure to perform. And understand that. So you've got to accommodate all areas of risk in your proposal, and then you can price yourself accordingly, and they'll accept that. Okay. A lot of times, that's why you see sometimes say, well, I bid a low bid of 120,000, and then they went with somebody else that did 140,000. Why did that happen? Because they probably spoke to the quality measures and how they can avoid any sort of failure in the document. And that's sometimes going lowballing on these type of bids, then you'll find that that's not the most effective way to do it. Okay. So here always acronyms. I was just kidding around today. We did a marketing email, we saw one yesterday about how somebody loves somebody else's company, and we say, hey, we don't send love letters, we send acronyms. Okay. Our letters mean something, everything. GFE, government furnished equipment. What is it? Hardware, vehicles, tools provided. Okay. The government furnished information that they have. What kind of data they'll give you actually? What are your credentials? How are you going to actually be able to connect to the information? Furnished property, GFP, workspace, facilities. Where are you going to be at? My first job, I was an auditor, and they used to stick me in the basement in the corner. I hated it. Oh, I was on that job for three months. You learn from that, and it's probably taught. I probably remember more about that job than just about anyway, because it was just so miserable, especially in the summertime. I just got out of school, college. I was, back then you think, if I work, it's 8 hours a week, I'm doing pretty good. But then all of a sudden you wake up and you got to get 40 hours a weekend, 60 hours a weekend in a compressed little box in the basement. And you think, my goodness, what am I involved? Government furnished property. How are you going to work? Facilities. Okay. GFE, reduce your costs, but create accountability some way for loss or damage. Okay. Understand those, anything that happens, if there's something's going to breaks down the vehicle, you can't get to a location on site, something of this nature, liability insurance, things of this nature. You gotta make sure you cover that cost, and understanding what they're going to expect you to do. Okay, list all GFE in your proposal and confirm your acceptance of the responsibility within the proposal. I will have a certificate of insurance to cover all these items. Step 5, I spoke to this earlier, ABCs, initially on the burden of the government: accuracy, brevity, clarity. Before you take the handoff and the handshake and you respond back to them, because then it becomes your responsibility. You need to understand what they're asking for. So flag any ambiguities, make sure you have your Q&A prepared to go, mark every unclear or contradictory requirement as you read it. Your value requirements create scope. Okay. And there's risk there, and you can expand beyond what they can measure you against. You don't want to have that happen. Help them tighten it up if you need to. I teach this topic in graduate school, and my students are typically going to be contract writers in the future, usually at the federal level. I spent a significant amount of time just talking about writing the scope of work and understanding how important it is to write well. Because a lot of us come to the table now, we got excellent tools to help us in that process. Use them effectively, but understand that importance of writing is probably one of the biggest parts of making sure that true handshake works effectively. Write precise questions. Okay. Don't just say, who is your previous whatever, or, talk about the sections 3.2 states this, help them understand where the ambiguity actually lies so they can go correct it. Um, gosh, don't forget to submit the questions for the official Q&A and take into consideration all these third-party pesky portals. Sometimes I get so irritated because you go in there and you're still not doing business with that government yet. So you don't have everything set up. You're trying to get that question in there. They got a deadline, and then they pop up some survey, and then all of a sudden they're asking you these questions about how well they're doing, and it's just delaying you, delaying you, delaying you. I actually missed the Q&A deadline. I had 40 questions. I got almost all of them in, about 38, and then one of those surveys popped up, and then it kicked me out. And I'm like, what am I going to do? No exceptions. Okay. Good questions. And I would just say, if you're a government thinking about using portal, design your own systems. It's just so easy these days. You need to have fair access to your data and not have it closed off behind a paywall. Good questions show you read carefully. So make sure you ask good questions. Don't ask dummy questions, the ones that you think you don't know, whatever, and you just are posing them. You're wasting their time. The answer is right there in the paper. Think like their future contractor that's going to serve them, that you want to impress them. Okay, run your questions through some sort of AI tool if you need to. Okay, clean it up. Okay, and a pro tip: this is submit 3 or 4 well-crafted questions. There's a whole school of thought. Frankly, I don't actually ask a lot of questions. Okay, I really consider it the government's burden to tell me what I need to know. If they don't tell me, then I can't be held responsible for it. So I risk exposing myself to other issues that could potentially reduce my costs, things of this nature. So I do watch for the questions, but I don't really ask a lot of questions. But it does demonstrate engagement without revealing your strategy typically. But it does. So this is a pro tip that we have for you. So if you want to ask questions, 3 to 5, not 50. Okay. Now, as I leave the class today, I will give you some common mistakes. Okay, and we want you to avoid these. First of all, skimming. Don't skim the statement of work. It is your work, and it's a huge contract. It's probably a big part of your business. A lot of times, the individual contract can be 5-10% of your business for the next year, and you don't want to just take that for advantage. So read every word. Okay, take the words as they come. Too. Make sure you understand the words that they're using. Missing deliverables, buried in appendices. That's a big one. And not only that, but when there's addendums, make sure you don't miss. I had this happen to me the other day. I didn't miss it, but I didn't clear a document we'd already completed, and they counted it as non-responsive. Made me a little irritated because they gave me a new document that didn't say not to delete the old document. So you got to pay attention to all that, the appendices and the exhibits that required. Failing to build a deliverable matrix that keeps everybody on schedule and task, and also make sure that you don't miss something. Assuming you understand an ambiguous requirement. If it's ambiguous, it's ambiguous. Okay. Ask for clarification. Not accounting for the right impact and cost. Government contracting is different. Make sure you price. We have a whole class of pricing analysis and how to do that. Make sure you don't forget that. Okay. And this includes like your cost of insurance, things of this nature, your bond, things of this nature. Confusing the scope of work, the statement of work or the scope with the evaluation criteria is different. Okay. They're in different sections. Your scope is telling you what they're trying to accomplish, the objectives, the evaluations, criteria or how they're going to measure you in that process to achieve that. Okay. They're different, completely different sections. Don't confuse them. Everything that I write though is help them achieve the statement of work, but with the evaluation criteria they're using to measure me. So today, when you leave here, your reading plan, if you want to, get that book in Amazon. It's a good little book. I was kind of surprised at how successful it's been. People really like to read it. It's a helpful handbook. You can keep it on your desktop, but read the statement of work first. Okay, before pricing or writing a single proposal. Always. Oftentimes, I read the statement of work, set aside, and come back, and then I read the entire RFP. I've said this is going to be my task, and I'm going to determine if I'm going to move forward with it. Before you do anything, okay, read the statement of work. Build a deliverable matrix after you go through and you understand all the details. Listing the format, frequency, and recipient. Highlight all performance standards. list all the GFE and GFP so you can account for them, and then flag every ambiguity and submit clarifying questions before that deadline. It's important. Okay. That's your challenge with any RFP today. So here we are at the end. I'd like to always just remind you, first of all, sign up for free at GovDirections. If you're coming from our YouTube channel, we have 80 to 90% of our information is completely free. Okay. Just go there, use it. It's helpful. We have a daily alerting system. We've been doing that since 1998. Over 1 billion bit alerts have been delivered. We serve all US states and Canada, provinces, and the states of Mexico. And so you will find that we are covering North America very solid, but also bids in 72 countries. And you have a significant amount completely free. Everybody asks me, how do you do that work? We have a lot of, we really do add value in state and local. You will see that value. That is not free. Okay. Just to help you with that understanding. Federal is already available in places and somewhat easy to get to. So we give that available to you. That's a free tier. All our education, we understand it takes a little bit of knowledge to get started. So we make that free as well. So I appreciate you stopping by and coming. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. I'll answer as many as I can. I'll check back every other day, but come tomorrow 11, I'll be decoding the evaluation criteria, the second most important part of the actual RFP, but it's really the most important part when it comes to your pocketbook. Okay. So pay attention to that. So see you tomorrow.